This episode is sponsored by Romanwell. Does your Google search contain something along the lines of, what can I eat with IBD? Are you stressing about how to navigate food choices at an upcoming wedding, family vacation, or graduation party? Don't worry. The IBD dietitians at Romanwell have got you covered. They're here to help you safely expand your diet and build your confidence in food selection by providing the one-on-one support and tools you need to navigate nutrition through all of life's phases. Go to romanwell.com to apply for a free consultation so you can start feeling and living well.
Hi, I'm Alicia.
And I'm Robin, and you're listening to Bowel Moments,
the podcast sharing real talk about the realities of IBD. Served on the rocks. This week, we share a warm apple juice and a hilarious conversation with Stacey Calabro, aka Stacey C The Deuce. We talk about her job in travel nursing and how she travels with inflammatory bowel disease. We talk about how IBD affects her joints and other illnesses. We talk about the importance of finding your inflammatory bowel disease family to support you, and how she's basically famous and rolls with famous friends. I laughed so hard recording this episode that my husband said he'd never heard me cackling this much for any episode. So I hope you enjoy and laugh along with us. Cheers.
Hi, everybody. It's Robin.
Hey, everyone. It's Alicia, and welcome to Bowel Moments. Yay.
Yay.
We are delighted to be joined by Stacey Calabro. Stacey, we are going to ask you to tell us a little bit more about yourself here very shortly, because I know you have a vibrant and engaging story, but we're going to ask you the worst question ever. What are you drinking?
I am drinking lukewarm apple juice from H-E-B that is in my office. We were going to record outside, which is where I had my Ensure Clear, but I'm using a cane right now, so getting back and forth is a little tough. And then I also had tap water from hose because I was at my splash pad. I mean, my water feature.
Splash pad / water feature.
It was the best $14 I have spent in years. That, I think, probably doubled the value of my home this summer.
I think so. I really do. I mean, and you also live someplace where it's quite warm. So I feel like this is a really good investment all around.
Yeah, it's like 98 degrees right now. So
yeah,
gross. Robin, what are you drinking?
I am drinking, it's my go-to, just like Champs is your go-to, cider. I'm drinking cider. I still have some of that fancy pomegranate and cherry cider, so I'm feeling fancy.
I went to Costco, I got some Spindrift soda, which is like the sparkling one with like actual fruit juice in it. It turns out their website has a whole area where you can say, what kind of Spindrift do you have and what kind of alcohol do you have and what kind of drink can you make with it?
That's like a genius. Thank you, Spindrift.
Yes. So I made myself a Spindrift, quote unquote, margarita. So it's lime Spindrift with like tequila and lime juice. And well, it's supposed to have Cointreau, but I don't have that. So it's just orange juice. So it's good. It's really good. And it's lighter, a little lighter than a regular margarita. So I'm loving it. Okay, Stacey, what is your connection to our IBD community? Tell us your story.
Okay, well, I basically got diagnosed when I was 26 years old. I'd had a kind of a rough year, just felt like I had the flu and had gone through just feeling kind of awful and having just pain that would go away, and I would kind of ignore it, and eventually had emergency surgery in December of 2001. And the pathology came back about 2 weeks later as Crohn's disease. And so that's how I got the official diagnosis. And I had been having episodes ever since I was a kid, but, had no idea what was going on, or whenever it came time to try to have some kind of diagnostic appointment, something would happen. Like I was in college and one of my doctors scheduled a colonoscopy the day before Thanksgiving and said, "Oh, you're fine to fly home." And my mom said, "You are not flying to fly home after that." And then one time I went for some kind of imaging out in Tyler and could not find the place. And so my friend just took me to Grandy's for breakfast instead. So that's, anyway, got to 26 years old and that's how I found out about it, or found out that I had it. But I think I was a sophomore in high school and met a girl on my swim team and she had it. And the first day that we actually hung out, we walked to the mall and we walked back and she had just started a new round of medication. I think she was on prednisone or something. And she said, "Oh my God, I'm going to throw up." And I was like, "Can you throw up in this boy's yard?" And she said, "I think so." So she made it all the way to his yard, sat down and puked all over it. And then I was like, this girl is magic. And so that just inspired, I was like, tell me everything. So basically what I knew about it was that she couldn't have milk or ice cream and she had like the cute cheeks from all the prednisone. And that's about what I knew knew about it until I was 26, and then jumped forward. And then let's see, I was in December of 01, and then in 02, I started calling around, finding out, I need to find support groups and books, and who can I talk to about this, because I really didn't know anybody I live in a small community and there's not a lot of folks with it. And I ended up calling the Dallas chapter of the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation and found out that there was a local support group. And I think I called on a Tuesday, and of course they had their monthly meeting the day before on a Monday. So I was going to have to wait a month. But then I also found out that there is a camp that happens every year, and they were looking for counselors. And my first job out of school, I had worked at a therapeutic camp for emotionally disturbed kids out in East Texas. And I was like, this is great. So then I just kind of kept going to the support groups, kept going to camp, kept telling more and more people about it. And then just I was a social worker when I was diagnosed. I had gone to school wanting to be a nurse and then completely freaked out when it was time to declare your major, because the nurses, they just were never visible. They were always in class, they were always at clinicals, they were always at the library, and there was no room for goofing off, which was what I was really interested in doing. And then they would just reappear at graduation, and that's how we knew who the nursing majors were. So I flipped over to the social work end of things and was able to goof off and study, which was awesome. And so I did social work for about 10, almost 15 years, and then had an opportunity to go to nursing school, which was heavily influenced by camp and my experience as a patient. It had a couple really rough hospitalizations, and my nurses were phenomenal. And I thought, I want to do that. I just want to do that. I wasn't having the impact that I needed to have on the world. My last job was as a probation officer, and I just remember hearing a parent of a kid in the hallway saying, don't listen to her. And I thought, how am I going to fight against that? What's the point in doing that? So I just quit and went to nursing school and have not looked back. And of course, I haven't worked in the GI field or anything, but I still am much happier with my choices. And every year I've been able to continue to take time off and go to camp, and have been supported by my peers and my bosses. And so it's been really good. And right now I'm having a massive flare, and luckily I work for a healthcare agency, and they're like, do what you need to do, work from home. And had an obstruction like a month and a half into my new job, and they were like, we got you. So I feel like I'm in the right place.
That's awesome.
So,
Yeah, that's remarkable.
I have to go back just one second, because I read your bio that you sent in. We send this little questionnaire, and you just talked about asking your friend to go vomit in someone's yard. But in your bio, you also say, I know that you're joking because I have been in email communication with you, so I kind of got your sense of humor, that you suspect she gave it to you when you shared a Dr. Pepper in 1992.
Yeah, that's how it happened. We were at lunch. She said, take a drink of mine. I had to clean out my retainer, and that's the moment that she transmitted it. And, she's a nurse now too. And she's like, that's not how it works. And I'm like, I don't care. We know the truth. And
but now the vomit story that you put in the bio makes so much more sense too. Like I totally understand it now. And so this friend that gave you Crohn's, it's okay though, because she could vomit on demand in someone's yard.
That was amazing. And why? I don't know.
I feel like it should have been pooping, but because we've talked about so much to people on the show about pooping your pants. But I feel like, Robin, vomit works too, I guess.
We don't know that she wasn't doing both.
That's true.
Yeah, well, we made it back to my house, and she didn't say anything about it. And, she was wearing the same clothes all day. But
I know I just took us down a road that's, probably not. Alicia will probably edit this out in post, but I just
Nope.
Well, I talked to my mom about it last night, and she's like, you can't tell people that, because what if they take you, for the truth? I said, Mom, no, nobody's going to believe that. You just never know, Stacey.
That bitch was patient zero, and we didn't even know.
She is awesome. If you can do that, if you can hold it until we get to that kid's yard and just let it go. I've never had that kind of control. So
no,
to her.
I have not. That is pretty funny though. But I'm glad you met somebody that had it as well when you were younger, because
and what are the odds? Yeah, that would be. And then later in life, when I became a probation officer, ended up becoming really fantastic friends. And she's got ulcerative colitis. And what are the odds that, I'm like literally a shit magnet. We just find each other in the world. but we consider each other's bathroom safe. Like I can go over there and blow it up and it doesn't matter. And she's got the good toilet paper and she's got the good solid doors that don't have the 2 inches between the floor and the bottom of the door. Like I can go in there and be safe, or we can actually poop and talk to each other. Like usually if I'm pooping, there's no talking.
No, that's a very good friend. I'm kind of impressed with that. To this day, like my husband doesn't know I poop. Nope. I think we've been together nearly 23 years at this point. Nope, doesn't know. Listen, I'm in therapy about it. It's fine.
It's okay.
It's okay.
My cats are always with me. I think we have like competitions. When I'm flaring, they're like, "Oh, I'll show you what I got." So there's a lot happening at the house right now.
So you decided to go back and do nursing school because of great experiences you had with nurses, but you didn't go into the GI space. Is that deliberate, or is it like, would you like to go into the GI space?
I think it was pretty deliberate. By the time I got to the point where I wanted to go to nursing school, I didn't want to. I think that I would just make everything about my personal experience if I went to work with a GI, which I would love. Like I've had fantastic GIs and we've joked about it, but I think that that's a little too close to home. And my friends at camp teased me. They're like, "Oh, you're going to go into peds." And I said, "No, why?" Because I had been dealing with teenagers and their parents in the social work world, which is very challenging. And I didn't want to have to do that as a nurse either. I just wanted to walk away and make a clean break. And so I went into adult trauma ICU. Like on the Princess Bride, when he says mostly dead, that's my favorite kind of patient. I don't want him breathing. I don't want him talking, moving, nothing. Like intubated and sedated, that's my love. And it's not always like that, but so that was my passion. And I got to work with some amazing people and learn some amazing skills. And when it was time to go, it was time to go and flip into, different things. But
now you're doing travel nursing though, right? Like, you're actually going around and traveling. Why was that? Is it just adventure? And then also, what has that been like as it relates to trying to find IBD care and trying to keep up with your own disease while you're in all of these different places?
Great question. That was a huge factor in deciding, am I going to leave traditional nursing? Because my last regular nursing job had been with hospice. And so I kind of was in control of my own schedule and I could come home as many times a day as I needed to. And I worked and lived in the same community, which has been fantastic because a lot of times I was making commutes up to 100 miles a day each way. And so that was really tough. And my first travel gig was into rural Alaska and had a really, really long conversation with my gastro and all of my specialists about going up there, because I went in knowing I wanted to go for 3 months, which is the typical travel time. And I would be working in a hospital. We were remote, but we had a hospital with an ER and a med-surg team. And then moderate ICU capabilities. I don't think that they could ventilate, but they could keep you safe until the travel team got there to get you to Anchorage, basically. Which I'd never needed, but they could drop an NG tube if I needed, and pain meds and things like that. At that point, I was actually doing really well, and I left in August and came back in November. And my plan had been to have my Stelara sent up to the hospital. Unfortunately, due to just the location, FedEx is not able to guarantee overnight delivery of the meds. And one of my coworkers had, I can't even remember what she had. It was lupus or something like that, but she had refrigerated medications, and hers were anywhere from 14 days to 6 weeks late getting to her. And I just could not risk that. And so I just texted my doc and said, "Listen, I'm doing all right. I'm eating really healthy up here. I'm walking everywhere because nobody has a car. And I don't want to risk that much money and have it not get up here." And he's like, "All right, we'll get you back on track when you get back." And so I'm kind of paying the price for that now. We kind of had to restart everything.
That's interesting to learn, though, because obviously that means that people who are living in Alaska that are in those areas also are not being able to access those medicines. That's really surprising.
Well, if you're a native and within the system, and one of their doctors goes through the insurance and orders Stelara, then they could get it shipped to, but the FedEx doesn't actually deliver to me. I would have to go to pick it up at the office, and they're open only certain hours and not typically all day. And it's just kind of hit or miss as to whether you can get your stuff or not. And so sometimes they're not there for 2 or 3 days. It could be weather, it could be illness, because once COVID hits a family, they're all in the same household. Nobody goes in for 2 weeks. And so just that's how things are up there and in this little area. So had I been more of a long-term resident and had a gastroenterologist who could set things up, but we just didn't have time. I couldn't establish with a gastro up there. And you have to, fight with the insurance to get approved for it and do all that song and dance. So, but now I actually am working with Optum. And so they are an insurance company and a pharmacy provider. And so I've been really fortunate that I keep Texas as my home base. And I've been flying out to California every week and back so that, and I have a house sitter that will get my Stelara, put it in the fridge in the garage and feed the cats for me. And then, I can take it as I need to. And so getting back on track with that. This spring, I ended up having an obstruction. Like 6 weeks into my job, and realized, okay, what I was doing wasn't working. And so we ended up, my gastro and I restarted Stelara, like with the infusion. And then on Friday, I'm due for the injection, just to get back on the 8-week cycle. But like over this weekend, I had symptoms of an obstruction again, but things have kind of kicked loose, but I'm still having, the pain and the cramping and everything. So we restarted a steroid regimen. So luckily I'm at home. We're dealing with some issues with the California licenses. They've been gracious enough to let people who do not have California licenses practice in California under kind of an emergency mandate for COVID, but that ends on the 30th of June. So all of us have been applying for our California licenses, like tens of thousands of us are. So we're all at the same time waiting for them to look, have you seen my records yet? So next week will be the 1st of July. And if I'm not licensed in the state of California, I can't be there and practice legally. So I may not be traveling next week either, but that's okay. So, it gives me more time to recover.
But you feel like the Stelara will probably kick back in and work for you?
I hope so. It's been really helpful for my arthritis symptoms more than my gut symptoms. And I'm having an issue with some arthritic knees too. A couple of weeks ago, I just woke up in the middle of the night and couldn't bend them or straighten them. And they were really swollen all the way down to my toes. And I had edema and, called my best friend in the middle of the night saying, I need help. And she took me to the hospital and they said, you just have edema. But do you know why?
That's interesting to me because I have joint pain also, quote unquote Crohn's associated joint pain. And I am also on Stelara and it does not seem to help the joint pain at all, but I am in endoscopic remission for my Crohn's. Mm-hmm. But the joint pain is so that's crazy how it works different. I mean, I know that that's what it does because everybody's disease is completely different. Oh, sure, it's like we all have different diseases, but the medications also work that way. It works on everybody differently. And so that's why some people can get into remission with it and some people can't. But it just, hearing you say that out loud, I'm like, dang, why isn't it working on my joint pain?
I wish it would work on my gut, but I'm really hopeful that it works on my knees because, trundling through 2 airports, 6 times a week is hard for me. And so I'm like, I hope that my knees start working within the next couple of weeks. Yeah, I called the gastro to ask for steroids, and he knows it's pretty bad if I do ask for them. And we had a quick conversation about what about Entocort for the next time. And he said, why not now? And he said, you're not going to have an immediate response, but probably long term is better. And it's the kinder, gentler. I don't grow the extra weird chin hairs, and I don't get angry in traffic steroid. So I get really aggressive and I don't like those weird little whiskers. And I eat things that I shouldn't eat. And I gain a lot of weight. I mean, I have no self-control.
Steroids are pretty terrible.
Yeah. But I mean, if I'm at the point where I'm in so much pain and I'm like, let's do it, I don't care, then he's willing to work with me. So I'm on day 1 of Entocort.
Well, fingers crossed that it helps you and that you don't get any weird chin hairs or start raging in traffic.
Thank you. I followed people home and I'm like, this is not me. So yeah, it's bad. I hope my mother does
it's not roid rage, it's road rage. Road rage.
So bad. Yes. I am hateful.
I mean, my first thought is, well, but you have a potential, if you get picked up or you get arrested, you have something to argue in court that temporary insanity. Actually, you could actually argue that, I feel like, with this.
I feel like, ma'am, no.
You're like, No, ma'am. I'm sorry.
And my mother would just be in the back. I taught you better than this. Who raised you?
Pretty sure my mom thinks that about a lot of things with me too. I am curious if
Same.
I'm curious if your nursing degree is helpful or hurtful with your IBD and your IBD care in particular.
I think it's helpful overall. It's made me stop going to WebMD. I had a doctor, and I clearly can hear Dr. Creevy outside the room lifting the big fat paper chart and going, and he walked in and said, "What do you think you have today?" Because I was self-diagnosing. And it was after a prednisone taper, and I had gained so much weight, and I refused to buy bigger underwear. And so they were cutting in to my legs. And in my sleep, I had hooked my thumbs under and sliced the top of my thigh with my fingernail and given myself some weird infection. And I just started crying, and I said, "I have scabies." And he said, "Are you sleeping with a hobo?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Then you don't have scabies." And he said, you cannot look at the internet anymore." And so I really remember that whenever I'm having moments of like, oh my gosh, this is it, I like try to back off and just think rationally. This is probably not worst case scenario, but I think as women, we can worst case scenario anything. Yeah, and I have access to resources that not, but I guess civilians don't. And, I can put a call into my gastro friends or, my friends, who are married to MDs and be like, let's talk about this. And I have friends who are CRNAs, and a friend who is a nurse prac, and she works in a pain clinic. And so she gives wonderful advice about safe things that I can take that are not going to really destroy my gut. And so, yeah, I just reach out to all those resources. But yeah, when it comes to my gut, I do defer to my GI a lot. And when my friends come and ask me, what does it mean when I'm shitting blood? I'm like, it means you need to talk to your doctor. I don't want to look at your rashes. I don't want to diagnose stuff. One girl came to me and she's like, what's this rash on my forehead? And I told her it was some like jungle rat or something. And she got so mad at me because she's like, that's not what my doctor said. And I said, but you went to your doctor. So she will never ask me again. And like my sister one time, she's like, what does this rash on my leg look like? And I said, well, it looks like you're on vacation in Mexico and you shaved your legs and you went in the water and you're bragging that you're on vacation. And she's like, that's correct.
Oh, what a jerk.
She was pretty funny though.
Getting back to your professional side, I am curious because part of what you were doing in some of your travels where you were doing COVID vaccinations, right?
Mm-hmm.
How was that being somebody? Because I know a lot of our IBD folks were pretty freaked out about, some of them taking medications that change your immune system, things like that. So talk to us about being deliberately putting yourself next to people in the public during a time when all the rest of us were running away.
It was pretty scary. I know when COVID first hit, I was doing hospice and actually got, face to face with my patients who were taking their last shaky breaths with COVID, due to no fault of their own. And then, walking away from that and doing the vaccines was awesome. And I did it at just a mass vaccination site. But then rolling into this, I knew that I was severely immunocompromised. And again, another long conversation with all of my doctors. And luckily I got to get the booster. And then the second booster, I was like front of the line for those. And one of the nice things about being in Alaska was we were so isolated. I really could control who I came into contact with. And I lived in my own single room in this little dorm situation. So I really could make it a point to not interact with anybody I didn't need to. I didn't have to go to the grocery store if I didn't need to, didn't want to, things like that. But then now traveling in the airports was the scariest. And I talked a lot of trash about, the mask mandates being lifted in the airports and on the planes. And then 2 weeks later, boom, it got me. And it got one of my coworkers in California too. And one of the girls there had a kidney stone, and then she had all kinds of complications after her kidney stone surgery. And so our plan right now is just, somebody's getting some sage, somebody's getting some holy water, and we're just going to bless that place because I don't know what else to do. Like, I just feel like we have anchored the universe. But I also feel like I survived and had a really, mild case of COVID because of that vaccine. if I hadn't had it, I think that I would have been a terrible candidate for the vent. I have a terrible lung history. I have asthma. I've had blood clots. And, I think that I would have been a waste of resources had I required a ventilator, and if my next door neighbor caught it and needed the vent, they needed it. And so when that all came down, I told my best friend, I'm a DNR, DNI. And so she takes that to the extreme now. So like when
you're like, I got a hangnail, and she's like, I'm sorry, Stacey, you're not gonna make it. I'm sorry to say goodbye to you.
She's the one that drove me, when I hurt my knees, and she's just telling anybody coming in, gotta get you a cup of water. She's a DNR. It's what she would have wanted. Did you want a sandwich? Just let her go. She's just the worst.
Yeah,
but the best.
Unplug, like just walking around your bed, unplugging every single thing that's plugged in. We can unplug her now.
This is the way she would want it.
Here's the clock. We're unplugging the clock. We're unplugging the phone. Whatever is plugged in.
Taking the gloves. Yes.
Oh no. I mean, it's nice to have a friend like that, but also, wow, she's cold-blooded.
She's the best. She is the absolute best. Well, I told her, I said, if it came down to it, really, honestly, if it came down to it and I got COVID in the very, very beginning when it was, really taking people out, I said, my mom and my stepmom, I don't think that they could make the choice in that moment. And she said, I can. And I said, then it's you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important conversation to have, even if it's just making hard medical decisions, even if it's not like, okay, you have to like DNR somebody, but even, some of the medical decisions that you have to make when you go in for surgeries and stuff like that, you're right. Like if your family member can't do what you want them to do, you got to find somebody that's going to uphold your wishes.
Yeah. And I was with her when her dad passed, and she was with me when my dad passed, and just kind of by happenstance. And so we know what it looks like. We know what needs to happen, and we can do that and honor each other's wishes. Whereas I think that my mom, my stepmom I think they could do it, but that's not something that I want to put on their plate.
No, I think it's good to have the friend that you have.
She won't vomit in my friend's yard. So
you got to find that girl.
I know. She's in Dallas. I gotta take her out.
Reconnect. Yeah.
Yes.
Robin, you were going to come off mute. What's up?
I mean, how do I follow that?
I don't know.
I don't know either. That's the point. I have no idea how to follow that.
Do you have any friends?
I want to ask questions based on Leisha's asked you questions about travel nursing and how that's affected like your IBD care. I want to know about I don't know, maybe working on shows for Netflix, like Queer Eye?
Yes, that was a complete out of the blue thing. I was working out at the Del Diamond in Round Rock, and that was a mass vaccination site, and our contract with the county was ending at the end of May, and I got a call out of the blue that I don't recognize the number, and it goes straight to voicemail, and my voicemail just says, leave me some good news. And that's, the guy says, the good news is I want you to be on a TV show. And I was like, whatever. And so he said, do you want to test the cast and crew in Austin while they're filming? And I said, sure. I didn't even ask the show. And then after about 4 or 5 calls, he was like, oh yeah, it's Queer Eye. And I'm like, oh my God, yes. So I started that June 1st, and it was the launch of Pride, and it was amazing. And they had started filming their season right before lockdown. So they had filmed about half the season, put everything into hold mode, and then restarted filming. And then I was the last of the nursing team to test. And so that was so much fun. And I mean, every day was just different and fun. And, it was all right to get up at 4:30 to be someplace at 6, because, oh my God, when are you going to get to, do something like this again? And so we were out on, if you all have watched the season, we were out on farms and, all these different locations, and it was so much fun. And then I was like, I want to follow them, but I don't think I can. So they're in New Orleans right now. So if you know anybody in New Orleans who is looking to COVID test, they might be looking for someone.
Robin does know people in New Orleans.
Well, there you go.
I do know people in New Orleans. And I'm sad that we didn't see any of them when we were running around town.
Well, they just started. I think they're just starting to, I think that the production team has been scouting locations and heroes. So I don't think that they've actually started filming. I think the guys are all converging.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's
oh my gosh, I got to meet their pets and their partners. And
oh yeah.
Yeah, I got to
That's
smooch
awesome.
so many pets, so many
I mean,
puppies.
everyone who's listening, I used to say 5 people. I'm going to bump it up to maybe 25 people that are listening to the show right now. You can live your best life with IBD
And meet the
Oh,
Fab
yeah.
Five.
and meet the Fab Five.
Yeah.
All right, but
Yeah.
Stacey, what kind of hot gossip can we get from you though? Like, was one of them like a total diva or?
No, they were all like so genuinely lovely, and it was crazy hot and raining and stuff last summer. I remember there was one day I just could not stop sweating, and Jonathan Van Ness was like, "Get her some water." I have that water bottle still. Will not open it. It's like it's on the shelf. It is. And I got to meet Jonathan Van Ness's cats, and I like, yeah, because I had masks and they had cats on them, and he's like, I like that, and I said, I'm a crazy cat lady, and he said, me too. And then I got to meet all 5 of the cats, and I'm just shaking.
He has
But
5 cats?
Yeah.
What are
And
their
they had a little
names?
dog. I don't know them all. There's
that's
Matilda
okay.
and Harry Larry. I don't know. Harry Larry was the one I remembered. I just like, hi. And but he had a little puppy that he adopted. There was one of the episodes, there was a farm and there was a litter of puppies. So everybody had adopted these puppies and they were just running all over the set, and they were so many puppy kisses. It was amazing.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I didn't watch that one because I literally started watching it and just immediately started crying. So I was like, okay, can't watch this one. Got to put this one away. Because yeah, I think it was the woman who has the sanctuary farm, and I'm like,
that was so much fun.
So much crying though. I'm like, I can't do this one. That was a sweet episode though, because again, it was fun it was shot in Texas, where both, where you live and Robin and I used to live. So it was fun to see.
Yeah.
I know. Just meeting all the heroes and their families and getting to like the backstories, and then, as they're filming, you're, back in the back bedroom, and one of them had a new baby. And so we were just, being very cautious to not touch the baby, but just, everybody was delicious. And
okay. Which one though is even more handsome in person? Because they're all very attractive men.
Anthony is just beautiful. He is just beautiful. But I love Jonathan Van Ness's little freckles so much. Tan is perfect.
His hair is, even my husband was like, saw him for the first time, was like, he has the most perfect hair I've ever seen.
Yeah. Karamo gave me a hug on a super sweaty day, and I said, I feel like I've been at the gym. And he said, did you go to the gym? And I said, look at me, I'm not athletic. And he laughed and he gave me a big hug anyway. And then I had to go test at Bobby's house, and he went and got his dog Bimini and like said, hello, Stacey. And they were all so lovely. I just couldn't pick out, but I think Anthony just looks like Christian Bale's hotter brother. And I tried to say thank you in Polish, and he just said Parowski. Like, he just pronounced his last name, so I knew I completely botched it. So I just,
but you tried. You tried. That's what matters.
That's right. It's the thought that counts. This episode is sponsored by Romanwell. Have you ever felt overwhelmed and unsure about what questions you should ask your doctor, or if you should get a referral to a dietitian? If so, you are not alone. The dietitians over at Romanwell help patients every day navigate these questions and many more. They've just released an amazing free resource for patients called the IBD Patient Starter Kit that is jam-packed with tips and tools to empower you to become your own best advocate. Check out the show notes or head on over to romanwell.com to download a copy of the IBD Patient Starter Kit today. You mentioned the support groups and camp, but did you ever lead a support group? Were you just a member of a support group? Like, I kind of want to dive into that a little bit, like, because I feel like nowadays support groups kind of may be viewed negatively, like it's people sitting in a circle. I don't know. I just feel like there might be a negative connotation when you say support group. And so I would really love to know more about that experience. What brought you back? What kept bringing you back to go to the support group again and again? And could you kind of dive into that a little bit for us?
Sure. I started going, they were like once a month in Austin, and it was adult support group. And I just had a lot of questions. And they had some really nice rules about, you can talk about your drugs, just don't talk about your dose. gross because, you know, you and I are built differently and we have different allergies and stuff. So we don't want anybody experimenting. And if you love Dr. Smith, but I hate Dr. Smith, let's not talk about Dr. Smith. Let's just say Dr. X, you know. But I learned a lot about different drugs to try and different foods to try. I didn't know that Lactaid made ice cream. I didn't know that onion rings were going to cause a flare for me. I didn't realize that certain foods were really going to be on my no list. I just kind of got this diagnosis and, you know, was set free. And I was terrified to go to a gastroenterologist because I had gotten my diagnosis. I didn't have to do a scope or anything. So I was like, I'm not going. And so I was having my general practitioner basically treat me, and he didn't really have any idea what he was doing. And so
I need you to pause for a second.
Okay.
You had your GP treat you for your IBD.
Yeah, because I was just terrified of going to a gastroenterologist because I didn't want to scope.
Okay, so just for everyone that's listening, that is an example of what not to do, Stacey.
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, and I was 26. I was not a nurse, but I just got this diagnosis. And then, but okay, I found out and I went to camp and I had a bunch of 11 and 12-year-old girls laughing about how high they were after their scopes and how they couldn't stop farting after their scopes and how just ridiculous they were, and that their parents expected them to go to school after them. And I was like, if these 6th and 7th graders can do this, I can definitely do this. And so those girls that were just laughing about it gave me the courage to go do it. But I was terrified of having a camera inserted. I was fine with having them slice over my belly and take out like 1.5 feet of intestine. That was fine. But, you know, anything beyond that, no. So I was just getting Cipro and Flagyl every time I didn't feel good. But then, you know, once I actually started going to a gastroenterologist and getting, you know, Crohn's drugs and, you know, moving forward beyond sulfasalazine and the crap that, you know, your general practitioner has, I started making some improvement.
I love that like a bunch of little girls basically like shamed you into going and getting your first colonoscopy.
Yeah, they were hilarious. And like, I didn't tell them. And I was just like, oh yeah, I got diagnosed, you know, in December. And they're like, oh, wow. I remember like for my first scope, you know, lying there and looking at the hose or whatever, you know, the scope, and it had the graduated numbers and realizing, and it's like 5, 10, 15. I was like, I wonder what those are for. And then like the panic, I was like, oh, that's how far up me they'll know that's how they'll know how far they are. And then like then the propofol hit, but they're like, her pressure, you know, the doctor was like, what's going on with you? And I was like, ah! And then they, you know, knocked me out. And so I make it a point to not look at the hose from now on. And
I'm shocked that they didn't have it like covered up, because I'm sure you're not the only person that's like, I'm sorry, no, I'm not into this anymore.
The thing is big. Yeah. I was like not okay with that. I thought it was going to be small, you know, like a straw. No, that thing is like a garden hose. So I was not prepared.
Had one colonoscopy done and I did not see it. And I think I would have had the same reaction. I would have been like, that's not happening. No, thank you.
I've had like 13.
I have had a couple without propofol, but I also at the time I only had my rectum, so most of my large intestine had been removed, and so I got to see, like I got to watch, right? And I did that, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 times, but then I went back and had one with propofol again, and I was like, oh, I'm never doing it without propofol again. What was I thinking? Why was I trying to be so strong? I can do this without, you know, I don't need anybody to go with me because I can just have my scope without medicine, and that way I can drive myself home. Never again. I will be like, why don't you just admit me to the hospital so I can spend the night, because I'm going to need another propofol in that.
I think, did I send you the picture of the propofol that I had drawn on my butt the last time I had a scope? I was like, I got a little message for you. And then the CRNA did not know me. And he was like, I'm going to give you some medicine. It's going to help you feel sleepy. And I was like, are you talking about this? And I pulled it and he's like, oh my God. He didn't know what I was. And then one time I had a really young gastro, and my roommate had worked, she worked in the OR. So she had those OR pins that are like permanent markers. And she wrote, oh my God, Becky, look at her butt, like on my ass. And he was like, I don't get the reference. And I'm yelling at him. And I'm like, how old are you?
Wait a minute.
I was like, are you even old?
He could not have been old enough to be a physician if he doesn't get that reference.
He was the worst. And he was laughing. But I was like, are you even old enough to be a doctor? And he's like, push the propofol. And so they slammed it. And it feels kind of like spicy. And I just remember going, it's so peppery. And then that's it. That's all I remember. But I was like, ew. And then I was gone. So, and he made me add him on Facebook because he's like, I don't trust you out there. I need to see what you're doing. And one time I had gone and checked in with him after an appointment and then immediately went to Chipotle with a friend of mine who ran the ICU downstairs. And he was like, this is why I don't trust you. He's like, this is not a confession where you like clear, you're absolved and you can just go eat whatever you want. But
why not?
It is.
You're an adult person. You can go eat whatever you want, whenever you want.
Correct.
Yeah. So he was very disappointed in me, as are all my gastroenterologists. Yeah. And I gave one of them some earbuds that, like they had little shit emoji. And he was like, what are these for? And I was like, these are for you to put in your ear as soon as I start talking about what I'm not going to do. Because if you want to do a scope, I'm not going to do it. If you want to do so, I'm not going to take the prednisone. And he was like, that's awesome. So you can just start your relationship out like that.
I love that one was like, add me to Facebook now. I'm like, no, you've saw my asshole. No, we're not friends.
That's right.
Yep. But he was, he was he's like, how can you be checking in Chipotle? And I was like, I'm drowning in guacamole right now. He hated me so much.
I don't think he hated you. I don't think that's what that was.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. I don't think that was hate.
Oh, I got my gastro. I got him one of those stickers I just sent you on because I told him about it at my last hospitalization. I bought them. He's like, I want one. It says, ask me about my butthole. But I think for him, it needs to be ask me about your butthole.
Yes.
So we'll need to like make a t-shirt for him.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a great one. Maybe, sell the shirt for, donations or something like that. There we go. Side hustle.
Yep. I think it's appropriate for camp. I don't know. We'll see.
As long as it says butthole, probably.
Yeah, it says
probably.
Butthole, yeah.
Possibly.
We'll find out.
Maybe.
Back to the show, Robin.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Oh, I wanted to just like some advice. I had to start over with a new gastroenterologist a couple years ago, and he was in partnership with my new and my old were partners in the same practice, but my old gastroenterologist was killed in a car accident, and so new gastro basically had to absorb his whole practice while grieving and all of this. So it was just a really big, just like painful mess. But I figured he's dealing with a lot, so I made a resume, and he's like, I have all your stuff in my chart or whatever, I can look in Epic, it's fine. But I put together what I thought was really, really important to me. It was just kind of like a timeline, like when my symptoms started, what they were like when I was a kid, when my big problems were as a kid, like in childhood, like around like what ages, what my symptoms were, and then when I really started getting my diagnosis, and then like all of the meds that I had tried and the surgeries and things like that, and then all my doctors instead of references, like these are, so he knows who is important to me in my care. And so I refer to that. But I thought that was really helpful for me just to say, listen, this is who I am. And I wanted to talk to the kids as they're getting ready to go off to school and stuff. If you want to if you can kind of consolidate the quick and dirty, that was really helpful for me. And then we didn't have to go through all of that because seeing him was really difficult for me. And, we both had this sadness. And so I just said, this is where we are. And, we'll talk more as we move forward, but he was pretty receptive to it.
So I love this idea of a resume. I've had to change doctors a couple of times, and one change, and particularly it was their patient portals didn't talk to each other, right? Not everybody has Epic. So
yes,
it was going through the process of trying to request records and it being, the time of the dinosaur when they can't just, email them or send them through a secure site. They have to be faxed or some bullshit.
Ancient. Yeah.
So having that's a genius idea, having an IBD resume in that situation. I just moved to another state. So I would love to have put together an IBD resume when I had to change primary care physicians. So
you can just do it for anything. Yeah. Just like your health history in general.
Yeah. I love that idea.
And so it's just, I'm lazy more than anything. And I don't want to retell my long ass story over and over. He's crying, I'm crying, like, just, we'll deal with this later. But, and like now we're to the point where, we'll get through the visit just like laughing. He was like, tell me about Alaska. How many bears did you see? I want to go there. And then I was like, are you going to listen to my belly? And he's like, we probably should. So.
Well, even our other Stacey guest, our other Stacey C that's been on the show, when she went to OBGYN, she actually printed out a picture of anatomy of what J pouch looks like right? So that the doctor, when she went to see the doctor, she can say like, okay, this is what it is on the inside now, because not everybody knows what a J pouch is. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's genius. So
that is, yes, because they probably read about it in school and talked about it for like 10 minutes like we did in school and then move on.
Right, exactly. So I feel like that could be added to your medical resume, something like that. If you have a situation like that where it is some kind of unique plumbing diversions.
Yes, and it doesn't even have to be, typed. It can just be handwritten, but just like what's important to you, and just like however timeline you want, or meds that don't work, or what are your responses? Like, I'm allergic to so many antibiotics. I was like, I just don't want to take them.
Right.
Like just antibiotics, please no. And like prednisone only, and like an emergency.
Right.
Kind of thing. And so, just like the important stuff. But yeah, I think it saves a lot of time, and then they can kind of glance through. And yeah, I mean, I've worked with Epic and it can be really great, but it can also be kind of a hassle to learn all that you need to learn about somebody. And then you can
especially when you have records like ours, right? If there was an actual printed file, it would be 6 inches thick. So it's a way to get the highlights, because sometimes when you go into a doctor's office, I mean, you just had a lot of stuff happen, right? With your flare. I did in the end of 2020. So when I was going back into my regular doctor's office after everything that happened to me in the hospital, if they hadn't taken a minute to like review that before they got in, we were 20 minutes going through so they could just try to decipher everything that I had just gone through. So if I had done like a Cliff's Notes version of it for them, that might have made both of our lives better. I love that idea so much. Thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome. And I emailed all my doctors when I got COVID, including my pulmonologist. And then I did a follow-up visit with him. And I said something about, not needing my inhalers as much now that I had recovered from COVID. And he was like, when did that happen? And he's like, my staff, they don't always tell me what I need to know. I was like, well, I made it, so I'm alive. What is it, like your friend emailed you, like, or she texted you like, I lived, bitch?
Yes, I did that after surgery. I sent that text message. I did it. I lived.
So I'm actually number 2. I'm Stacey number 2. So you can call me the Deuce if you need to. This is not the first time that I've been Stacey number 2 in a situation.
And it's fitting.
It is fitting. Number 2. I'm just going to call you number 2.
Okay.
I do really like the idea of the resume, because I mean, one of our past guests, Nicole, who's a therapist, was talking about that's something she talks to her patients about, because especially if you're not feeling well, like maybe you don't have the energy to go through everything, and just like, here you go, look at this resume.
Or you could email it. Like almost all of us have the opportunity to, like submit your check-in stuff early. You can email it, you can drop it off a week before and just say like, just have them look at this in between, the patient before me and me. And, just let's catch up, or grab a highlighter and I'll tell you what you need to know. I have a lot of specialists, and, we talk about a lot of the same stuff. And yeah, when you don't feel good, the last thing I want to do is relive the last 3 months.
Agreed.
Talk about how to get through the next 3 months, not talk about the last 3 months.
So I'm curious, because you mentioned having a lot of specialists and that you were having some edema issues. You do have some co-occurring disorders, correct? Or so illnesses. What is it like trying to, number one, and you don't have to answer this, but are they related to your inflammatory bowel disease or unrelated? And then what is it like to try to coordinate all those people to work together?
I feel like they are related. They're all autoimmune disorders. And so like I have the psoriasis and I have this very unique arthritis, and I can't even remember the name of it, but I can't even remember the name, but it's kind of like ankylosing spondylitis, but spondylopathy. And then so I've noticed that when I have an issue with one, another one is definitely kind of going to crop up. So I feel like with this flare that I'm having with my intestinal tract, that, it happens to be at exactly the same time that my knees are blowing up like I've never experienced before. And it took me going to my PCP's office. I had to go to a follow-up visit, and I had already made an appointment because my knee had been a little bit stiff and sore. And so I just made a regular appointment, and I turned that into the post-ER visit. And she said, I think that this is your, what you call it, extraintestinal symptoms with your Crohn's. It's kind of like, things will go together and they affect each other, like a peanut butter parfait. Like the Crohn's is the ice cream, and then you have the chocolate dressing, which is the psoriasis, which is acting up in my hair and my body, and the arthritis is the peanut. And they they work really nicely together. And then, of course, I'm lactose intolerant, cannot handle any of them. So there are consequences when I have that peanut butter parfait situation happening in my body. And it's funny, like you treat one, like they told me, hey, let's do 800 milligrams of ibuprofen 3 times a day. Awesome. Except you can't have that when you have, IBD, but Tylenol works like magic on nothing. So you risk it. You take the ibuprofen and then guess what? Guess who has dry bleed? I do. But is it worth it? Maybe. So then you go for the steroids for the steroidal anti-inflammatory, but then, you have your other issues. But yeah, so fortunately, all of my doctors are within the same hospital system. So they do get to read each other. But yes, I talked to one and I immediately, talked to the others via my chart. And they're like, yeah, Dr. So-and-so reached out. Or if I'm in a hospital or an ER for one situation, I let them know. And they are really pretty good about talking to each other. I also have an endocrinologist who deals with my vitamin D deficiency. And then I'm missing the part of my gut that helps process your vitamin B levels. And so, and then energy wise and all of that affects everything else. And so, yeah, they are really very fortunate. But yeah, I had to really push for it when they weren't all at the same. This was like pre-computer charting. Oh my God, it was a mess. But yeah, so you have to kind of fight to be your own advocate. And I think being a nurse makes things make a little bit more sense to me about like, oh, this is how this is affecting. And I really like, is this Motrin going to be worth it in 3 days? And I'm like, I got to risk it. I got to walk. I got to be able to walk to the car to get to the doctor's office. Yeah, it's hard to juggle. But yeah, you see that they do kind of like feed off of each other. And like if I've had a flu or something like that, I do typically get a flare afterwards. Do you do that too?
I actually don't get sick that often, like a regular cold. So I don't notice it with that. But whenever I feel my joints swelling, not just a normal aching, but like I feel them swelling, I know that I'm probably gonna have some abdominal issues, like coming up quick, following right behind that. Yeah.
And my best friend has trouble with her elbows, and then she'll get a rash like on the inside of her elbows, and that's how she's starting to have issues. So if I see her starting to scratch, I know that she's not doing okay.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because I know that I'm, at least my last scope, which was in late March, early April, I was in endoscopic remission. So, technically the joint pain, it shouldn't signal that, right? But IBD does what it wants.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like this weird balance. One might be really good and one might not be that awesome.
Yeah. We've kept you on this call for, we're at over an hour now, if you could believe it. I am going to ask you the last question that we ask all of our guests. And that is, what is the one thing that you want IBD patients to know to leave this show with?
Oh gosh. I think I have like a couple things that might kind of overlap, but like number one, find your IBD family. I think it's really important to find people who get it and just like can tell by the look on your face that you're okay or you're not okay. And your family like learns that, but your IBD family just already has it. And eventually they're going to be equal. But it's really important to have that group of friends and that just know how to support you and that your family doesn't choose like the pity option. I just feel like I don't want that because I can throw myself a great pity party. And of course, for introverts and people who really don't care for people, that's okay. You don't have to do that. For me, humor has been huge, just absolutely huge. That's the way that I just deal with stuff. And so I have continued through my IBD journey with just, farts are funny and, how many times have I shit my pants during the hospital stay? 7. And, it is what it is because you can definitely go down that, spiral and just live in misery. Or you can just be like, all right, can I make it to the bathroom without changing my pants? And find what works for you. And if humor's not for everybody, and that's okay. But embrace your inner weirdo, however that works for you.
I think that's really great advice. And that's, it's one of the reasons why I was really excited to have you on the show is that you are by far one of the funniest people I interact with. And so I was like, oh, she's going to be fun to have on the show. And I'm excited for us to share some of your delightful pictures you sent to us that I feel like really encapsulate, interactions with you. So this is It has been a lot of fun to have you on the show. We really appreciate you opening up and sharing your story with us, because I know it's
thank
not
you so
always
much
easy.
for having me, and I hope that I wasn't a total doofus. We've had like doctors on here. My mom's like, please watch your mouth. I'm like,
we swear, the doctors swear. That's part of the show. And thank you, Stacey, for joining us on Bowel Moments, but thank you everyone else for joining us tonight as well. So cheers.
Ask me about my butthole. Hi, this is Stacey, aka The Deuce. If you like today's episode and these lovely ladies, please rate, review, and subscribe, and share with your friends. I have like 2 friends, so you want to beat me? Bring it on.